Hey guys, and welcome. Today, rather predictably, I'm going to be doing a part 2 of my favorite Black Mirror episodes. So I'll be covering season 4, 5, 6, and 7. But before I get to that, I just wanted to come on and say thank you. Thank you for watching, thank you for liking, thank you for the comments, so many of which have generated interesting discussions, and I am just grateful. So I'll shut up now. Let's get to the video. Season 4, Hang the DJ. Hang the DJ opens on a perfectly manicured date. A young man and woman, Frank and Amy, meet in a chic restaurant. They laugh awkwardly, trade small talk, and seem to be getting along pretty well. They then pull out small metal devices, which we learn assign every couple an exact expiration date for their relationship. Sometimes years, sometimes hours. Frank and Amy's first timer blinks, 12 hours. The couple ends up having a good time together, and having to go their separate ways after the 12 hours is bittersweet. The society they live in is all boundaries and efficiency. A massive wall encloses their world. No one questions what lies beyond. Every romantic pairing is dictated by the device I mentioned earlier, called Coach. Residents move from partner to partner, each relationship another data point to help the system find their ultimate match. We follow Frank and Amy and witness their next relationships. She's paired with a string of men who range from charming to unbearable. He endures a grueling year with a woman who seems to despise him. Both become jaded as the process grinds on, their initial spark fading into memory, but never quite dying. Months later, the system reunites them for what seems like a long-term trial. Overjoyed, they swear not to look at the new expiration date, choosing instead to savor their time together. For a while, it feels like real love. But temptation wins. Frank secretly checks the device. The moment he does, their timer starts to shrink in real time, ticking down faster and faster with every glance. Frank freaks out as he sees the timer go from 2 years down to days. Amy senses something is wrong, and Frank finally tells her he looked at the device behind her back. Amy is understandably upset as Frank didn't follow their agreement, leaving both of them disappointed as they seemed like an amazing match. Coach eventually orders them to separate and meet their final matches. Both comply outwardly, but feel hollow. On the night Amy's meant to meet her ultimate partner, she spots Frank and tells him she doesn't want to meet her final match. Instead, she wants to be with him. Frank agrees, and they run to the perimeter wall together as alarms blare. Guards appear. The world around them flickers strangely, like a simulation unraveling. They climb the wall as soldiers close in, and when they reach the top, everything freezes. The truth clicks into place. Frank and Amy were never in a physical society at all, but inside a digital training simulation, one of 1,000 parallel scenarios run by a dating app. Each scenario tested whether their virtual selves would rebel against the system for love. Out of 1,000 simulations, they chose each other and escaped 998 times. In the real world, the actual Frank and Amy, strangers in a crowded bar, catch each other's eyes as their phones display a 99.8% match. Although relatable in Frank and Amy's frustration throughout the episode, the ending was a pleasant, surprising escape from the usual bleak finale. Of course, let's not forget the amazing soundtrack, with the Smiths in the background as the episode comes to a close. Season 5, Smithereens. Smithereens is one of Black Mirror's most grounded episodes, unfolding less like sci-fi and more like a grim hostage drama. Chris, a grieving rideshare driver, kidnaps a young intern from the social media giant Smithereen and demands only one thing: to speak directly with the company's elusive CEO. As police scramble and media swarms, Chris holds his victim at gunpoint in a stalled car, explaining his torment. His fiancée died in a crash caused by his own split-second distraction, checking his phone for a meaningless notification. What seems at first like a random crime becomes a desperate plea for accountability, not just from the CEO, but from an entire culture addicted to dopamine hits and endless scrolling. The tension builds as negotiators and executives weigh options, algorithms, and liability, treating the crisis as data rather than human tragedy. By the time Chris finally reaches the CEO in a quiet call, it's less confrontation than confession. He's not a terrorist, just a broken man furious at himself and the system that enabled his distraction. The ending is left chillingly ambiguous. Gunshots ring out. We never see who survives, while across the world, users glance at their phones and scroll on. Smithereens strips away the futuristic tech flourishes typical of Black Mirror, showing how the dangers of our digital obsessions are already here, mundane and devastating. Season 6, Log Henry. In this episode, Davis, a young filmmaker, returns to his sleepy Scottish hometown with his girlfriend Pia to shoot a quaint nature documentary. The village is beautiful, but hollowed out, its economy bled dry after a notorious crime decades earlier. Pia quickly becomes fascinated with the dark history. A local couple was tortured and killed by a sadistic man named Ian Adair, whose name still haunts the town. Instead of sheep and scenery, she urges Davis to dig into the old crime as their real story. At first, the investigation feels opportunistic, two ambitious artists trying to spin trauma into streaming gold. They interviewed Davis's old friend Stuart, whose father was the policeman who brought down Adair, and sift through brutal archives. The project begins to snowball into a full true crime feature. But Davis's mom, Janet, grows tense at their probing, snapping at Pia and insisting the past should stay buried. Her nerves feel like grief, until they feel like there's something else. Then comes the reveal. Pia and Davis stumbled on tapes hidden in Janet's home. The recordings show not Adair as the monster, but Davis's own parents, Janet and his late father, cheerfully participating in the torture and murder spree. Adair wasn't the architect, just their scapegoat. Janet, cornered by discovery, takes her own life. The episode closes in gutting irony. Davis's documentary, rebranded as Log Henry, premieres on a major streaming service. At the glitzy awards ceremony, critics praised the chilling authenticity and Pia's absence. She died in an accident during the investigation, becomes a tragic footnote that adds further drama to the documentary. Davis sits alone, numbed and hollow, while his hometown, once defined by silence, is commodified anew as content. Log Henry is Black Mirror's take on the true crime boom, how stories of brutality are repackaged into entertainment, how human grief becomes a streaming hook, and how the people closest to the horror are the ones left broken, while the rest of us binge the spectacle. How after we turn the TV off and don't spend another second thinking about the people and their stories, those people are still living with their grief and pain. This episode makes me think about how much true crime I myself consume, and how it's made me relatively desensitized to the content of these documentaries. There's something appalling about our reactions to it, even my own inability to think of the names of the victims, just because it all blurs together due to the sheer volume of the material I have consumed. In Log Henry, it's interesting to see how, despite everything that's happened, once the situation was exploited, Davis was all alone. His story just content. Once consumed, the audience moved on to the next one. Season 7, Common People. Common People opens with what feels like a small domestic tragedy. Mike, a welder, and his schoolteacher wife Amanda are trying for a child, but their plans shatter when Amanda collapses at work and doctors diagnose a deadly brain tumor. In a world where miracle tech and crushing cost collide, Mike is offered Rivermind, a service that can patch Amanda's brain with synthetic, server-powered tissue, streaming her consciousness back to life. The catch? It's subscription-based. At first, the price, $300 a month, seems manageable. Amanda wakes, smiles, they breathe hope, but cracks appear quickly. The service has geographic limits, and Amanda can't leave certain zones without premium access. She begins unconsciously blurting out ads during her waking hours. Commercials she doesn't even realize she's speaking. To escape these restrictions, Mike is pressured to upgrade to Plus, then Lux. Tiers with ever higher cost and ever greater control over Amanda's body and mind. Mike scrapes together money however he can. He becomes a masked performer on a degrading streaming site called Dumb Dummies, doing humiliating stunts for cash. When his live streams are revealed to coworkers, Mike loses it. As a result, he loses his job after a violent confrontation with a colleague. And all the while, Amanda's condition worsens. She's sleeping more, drifting more, and adverts become more intrusive. Finally, Amanda tells Mike she can't endure it anymore. She asks him to do it while she's not there, meaning during one of her ad delivery lapses when she's not mentally present. In a hushed, intimate moment, he suffocates her with a pillow as she spouts an ad. But the horror doesn't end there. Mike walks into the room where his Dumb Dummies live stream is still running. He's holding a box cutter. He looks dead-eyed into the camera. The door closes, and we're left with the brutal ambiguity of what he'll do next. This episode hit me really hard, even though the premise wasn't particularly groundbreaking. The acting was superb, and the pain felt by the characters was just palpable. I remember after watching it, I sat there for a couple minutes, just feeling empty and disillusioned. I loved it. And that was part 2 of my favorite episodes of Black Mirror. It's been interesting to see the direction in which the writers have taken the show, and despite some flops, I'm still really looking forward to seeing what they come up with next. Let me know in the comments what your favorites are and why. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, and thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.